I'm very curious to hear, you did a little bit of research for this interview by going to a vacation rental for a couple weeks. How was your trip?
Oh, I thought you meant going actually researching. It was gorgeous. It was actually, interestingly, which you might find interestingly, the photos didn't do it justice at all. And then we looked at the reviews, and many people actually wrote that, like, the photos don't do it justice, but they seem not to care. So they keep posting crappy photos. So our expectations are really low. And we got there, and I actually wasn't that interested at all. And I had really low expectations, given it was last minute and everything was getting booked up. So anything would be better than being trapped in the house. So we got there, but it was actually on a waterfall. Like, literally, that was
What?
yeah.
And that wasn't even part of the description?
Barely. We kind of thought,
God.
there's a little lake.
This experience in general was way better than a vacation rental that hypes itself and actually falls short on the delivery. This was like the opposite of that.
I mean, yeah, I'm kind of one for realistic, because I think also part of the journey starts before you get there. So, the minute you book it, you're excited, or the minute you're looking, you're excited. We teach about this in Saira, like, when does anticipation start? And that actually adds to the experience. I would probably invest in higher quality photos. Not that they need to, because these guys are booked out.
Yeah, maybe that's their secret.
Yeah.
They get your expectations so low that they can't help but exceed it. How do you feel about doing a podcast here?
You mean now?
Yeah, you ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I'm ready. This is it.
Hey, Unlocked listeners. This episode's brought to you by Vintori, a company we've been recommending quite a bit lately. You can easily add new homeowners to your network because Vintori is the only sales and marketing platform dedicated exclusively to helping you do that, helping you grow your inventory. Head over to vintori.com/unlocked to unlock, quite literally, a beautiful masterclass lesson on how to grow your inventory completely free of charge. And Point Central, the leader in business-grade smart property solutions designed for vacation rental properties. Point Central's technology helps you increase property safety, reduce operational costs, and improve guest satisfaction. Who wouldn't want all three of those things? Head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB for a great demo. And there's a reason we love these kinds of companies. They do really good work. What's up, Stu?
How's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's going great. I'm extremely excited about this podcast episode. I just listened to the draft version and think our colleagues are going to be extremely excited. This is important information.
Yeah, I was really impressed with this one. We're getting someone who not only has taken a hospitality school concept and figured out a way to train people to provide better personnel to hotels than they could find otherwise, but they've also found a way to connect with a community of people in need that really want these jobs and really want this training and wouldn't have an opportunity to be involved otherwise. And the combination is just fantastic, and her success stories are just fantastic. And I can't stop thinking about the vacation rental industry and how we could apply this to that.
And in all fairness, I've been following Harsha's story since the very, very early days when she visited Casco Viejo and was considering Panama as a destination for her pop-up school. And it's now, of course, today a completely evolved program. She's now on stage at Skift Global Forum talking about this wonderful work. But my big takeaway is that the hiring process for a niche like vacation rentals, it's not a straightforward thing. It's not like accounting. It's a process. And no matter how small you are, the more organized you can be about this process and understanding the steps that go into identifying people in the community who could be a good fit for your company, training them with all the things that might be necessary, and ultimately finding the right fit within your business. It just seems like one of those strategic plays that a lot of our colleagues can benefit from. It's the single biggest challenge that many of them share with us. hiring the right team and keeping them. And this is kind of, in a nutshell, how it's done, no?
Yeah, I'm really excited for everyone to listen to this and take some stuff away for themselves. With that said, should we hit the play button?
Let's do it. Harsha L'Acqua is the founder of Saira Hospitality, which partners with hotels to create pop-up schools that provide local communities with the resources they need to build real careers in hospitality. Today, we're going to talk about what happens when a vacation rental business is forced to focus on their community in order to survive, and why doing what you love isn't always completely obvious. It takes some marinating. Harsha, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Matt. Nice to be here.
I don't know why I feel the need to turn on my baseball announcement voice whenever we actually begin, but you are welcomed here.
Thank you.
How is your morning? Give us a little walkthrough of what your days are like post-pandemic in New York City.
Interesting question. Weirdly, my days are similar to what they were before pandemic. I don't know what that says about myself just being a nonprofit and used to working for little to no money. On the positive side, I guess it speaks to self-motivation, but very similar. I always work from home. They start a little later than usual. These days, I don't really want to take calls before 10, if I can help it, knowing there's no real urgency. But otherwise, yeah, they're similar. Working from home, similar hours. Of course, different in that we don't have immediate projects. We're not doing any business development. But yeah, similar.
And are you making your way out into the streets and getting some fresh air? What's the vibe in New York City right now?
I'm not doing much of that, to be honest with you. I'm doing a little of it. I'm trying to get more and more, what's the word? Daring, I guess. And yesterday on Memorial Day, my husband and I decided that we were going to city bike across the bridge into the city that we haven't seen in 3 months because we're based in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And then from the city bike, we got one of those Revel kind of Vespa scooter bikes and drove around the city. And then we got so tired, we took an Uber back. And that's as adventurous as we've ever been. We were exhausted.
That does sound very daring. I'm proud of you guys.
It really was. It was a lot of alcohol being sprayed on bikes and a lot of panic attacks under masks. And it wasn't as relaxing. And it was honestly a pretty sad ride. It was the quickest we've ever gone from the east side to the west side, right? In 5 minutes. No cars on the road, but it's not the city that we left 3 months ago, and it was sad. It was a lot more homeless. You could feel a lot more desperation on the street. As soon as you got into the city, you could see arguments, you could see anger, you could feel resentment. We drove past the Bowery Mission, and it's literally become their corner. It's their street now. The people who go to the shelter. So it was, it's a city that for me, it's kind of always, I'm like, what are we going to eat on this corner? What do we eat on this block? And where's our favorite restaurant? And you just drive by it and it's fueled by food, right? And everything's shut. And then you have weird, I shouldn't say weird, but it's an interesting mentality to me to see people who are grabbing cocktails. And so, they're meeting up with friends, and a lot of restaurants are doing their own kind of to-go versions of bars, and you kind of drink on the street. So you get a cocktail, you take your mask off, you have a cocktail on the street. It seems strange to me, but there's a lot of that happening.
Yeah, it sounds like everything that you're describing sounds almost like a different city in a way.
It's so different. Yeah.
And this is kind of rooted in how I first met you. You were exploring different cities. This is way back when. I don't even remember when the first time we met was. It must have been 1980.
Don't age yourself, Matt. It was 2013, 2014. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's 2014, and you came to our wonderful little historic district of
Mm-hmm.
Casco Viejo,
Mm-hmm.
Panama, and you stayed for a couple of days. Did you
Mm-hmm.
enjoy yourself? Did you like what you saw?
That's such a great destination. And
Hmm.
I still till today don't really understand why it, to me, hasn't taken off more. It's a bit like Sri Lanka, which has taken off a lot more. But Panama, to me, I couldn't understand it. I was like, these guys have the best beaches, they have the warmest people, they have great food. They have a city vibe, an old city vibe, a beach. I mean, gorgeous water. I still don't really understand why more people don't know about it. It's like a secret, a
Yeah.
weird secret.
Yeah. Well, I could do a whole podcast on why I think the internal forces at play in Panama. That's for a separate
Right.
discussion.
Let's do
Uh,
that.
one of the first, let's do that next pandemic. One of the interesting things that you and I really hit it off on was
Mm,
the role of community and the
mm,
local residents participating in the growth of a neighborhood. And back in those
mhm,
days, you explained to me this very early idea of what has evolved into something really cool. And you basically, I
mhm,
remember you calling it Saira Hospitality at the time, and that is still the name.
mm,
But it was
mhm.
very, very early on in those days, right?
Yeah, that was, I mean, we weren't even incorporated. A friend from hotel school came with me. He was working with me kind of for free, and then had to get a job. But he came with me, and we were scoping out to see if Panama, at the time, it was going to be a permanent school. So we were thinking maybe we should launch it in Panama with the number of hotels there and the number of people who needed opportunity. But it was just an idea. Hadn't done a pilot, just had a concept kind of in my mind.
And when you said hotel school, quick background for those who
Mhm.
don't know you, you previously worked in hotels and resorts and real
Mhm.
estate, and you actually
Mhm.
studied at Cornell, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
that
Doing you.
everybody talks about that school like it's the absolute best, best, best? Is that really the best?
Mm, it's my favorite. Yeah. I
Okay,
I
good
would
answer.
I yeah, I think it, of course people who go to Lausanne and Les Roches, but it's such a great school. I think part of it is they take you away from the city
Hmm.
and they put you in Ithaca, 4 or 5 hours away from New York City, and you're kind of trapped there. Although I was very keen to get out every weekend, but most of us are just trapped there. And it's the more you think about that. I was only there for a year. I did the master's program,
Okay.
but the more I think about, now we're in May and it's graduation, and it's been, what is it, 6 years? 6 years since we graduated, and all these photos pop up. And it's like, oh, it's been 6 years since you were in Ithaca and graduation on May 20th or something. And it's such an amazing gift to take a year out like that.
Hmm.
And I was 30, 29, 30, and friends were always teasing me that I was kind of in the middle of the age group, but friends who were always in the early 20s tell me I was super old. But it was just this gap from like reality. A bit like today, different, but similar. And you kind of have this year to just, I mean, how amazing. You just get to learn. And not that I'm super academic, but you get to just sit in class and learn about hotel design and planning and development and consumer behavior. And you kind of pick your topics and you just connect with friends. And your life there's no stress about work or money or anything. It's just, you hang out, you try and get your assignments done in time. It becomes much more important than it really is. And it's a dream.
When I was in school, I wasn't paying attention at all.
Mm.
And I have these days currently in my professional life in which I say to myself,
Shocker.
gosh, I could have learned so much if I actually cared at that moment. And I think to myself,
Right.
man, it could be really interesting to do one of these year programs and really learn from the absolute best in the world how to do this stuff that I've kind of been trying to cobble together on my own. At the end of your
Mm.
Cornell experience, this was kind of like your
Mm.
your your competition thing was kind of the kickstart for Saira, right?
Yeah, it was the business plan competition.
Okay, walk people through that.
Yeah, you can take different tracks when you get to school. You can take real estate marketing. I chose entrepreneurship. Because I was older than my friends, I had already worked in the industry for 10 years. And I knew that I wanted to, at that point, and I still do, want to create a hotel and a school. And the profits from the hotel will fund this nonprofit school, which is still one of my dreams. But I entered this business plan competition they have every year, and it's open to the entire hotel school, so undergrads and grads.
Okay.
And it's basically part of the entrepreneurship program. And you basically get to the semifinalists and the finalists, and it's a big deal at the school. And it's presented at the kind of alumni weekend, so a lot of alumni will come back and judge it.
Cool.
And they've increased the prize, I think, since I graduated,
Wait, but
annoyingly.
you won?
But yeah, shockingly. Yeah, I won. I know.
That's
I know.
amazing.
It was shocking. Yeah, it really was. It was also a nonprofit, and I think it's the very first time a nonprofit would win. But a lot of my mentality is that we might be a nonprofit, but we still have to have revenue drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting, in today's market. But at that point, I try and see nonprofits as businesses, and you can't rely on donations. So I think what set us apart in the nonprofit world, and still does today, is that you have ideas as to where the money is going to come from, and you're not going to rely on donations. So
let's get a little bit into all these many years that have passed since you explained to me this little idea, which is now a real thing. Saira has sort of focused on hotels, upscale hotels that either hadn't really thought about or had trouble with finding local employees that were not necessarily trained in that department. In some cases, they had other challenges. Walk us through kind of the general methodology that Saira uses, and then I want to walk into some of the, I don't know, I keep saying walk. Let's just walk everywhere. Walk into, walk through some of the achievements that you've had in the last few years, because they're absolutely amazing. Yeah, but let's start with the basic methodology, what you do when you walk in there.
So we partner with, and it's luxury lifestyle hotels. It's really hotels at, pre-COVID that used to have the budget for a school like this, and hotels also that sometimes, just to go back on what you were saying, sometimes it's hotels that wonder where they're going to find the talent, and sometimes it's hotels that might have access to talent but realize the value of investing in community before they build their hotels there.
Nice difference there. Yeah.
Yeah. And normally it's a combination, but they are quite visionary hotel partners that we've had in the past and probably will continue to have. So we partner with them about 6 months before opening. You really want to sign a contract at least 6 months before opening. And we work backwards. So they will say to us, we need to hire, let's say, 50 entry-level positions, and there may be 20 F&B, there might be 10 front office, and say 20 housekeeping, just ballpark, whatever. And so we're like, okay, 50. So that means that we really want to give them an opportunity to hire out of maybe 70, 75. So we want about 75 students. And we say to the hotel, how much time do we have? How much money do you have? Do you need them to have technical skills at the end of this? Or is it just really that kind of hospitality gene and that foundation and desire and passion and purpose to be in hospitality? And if they want a longer program, we do everywhere from 2 weeks to 8 weeks. So 2, 4, 6, and 8 week programs that are kind of pop-ups that happen just before they're ready to hire.
And this would be a service that a traditional HR company wouldn't necessarily specialize in, right?
No. The HR company, the talent that, first of all, HR will typically be focusing more well, recruitment will be typically focusing more on management, right? So that's, and I'll take a fee, and it's a different kind of model. And then HR will typically spend maybe 50,000, at maybe the higher end, I guess, in terms of pre-opening budget. And so that, and out of that, they'll spend maybe 5-10 on a hiring fair. And just, kind of much sooner to the hotel opening. So they'll get everything lined up, and then right at the end, they'll try and focus on, okay, where are we finding the housekeepers? Where are we finding, and that's what's wrong, in my opinion.
Elaborate on that.
Yeah, well, you're spending so long on the product, and you're spending so long on getting the permits and the design and the team in place and the management team, and but the people who are interacting with your guests the most, which are the bellmen and the bartenders, the housekeepers, the front line at entry level, they're the ones that you're going to often see who are hired very last minute, trying to fill the gaps. Suddenly the hotel's ready to open and you need to fill these positions. They're not given the same attention that you're giving the management, who rarely see the guest. So, and then you say, oh, we'll do an orientation, and you often don't do an orientation. And because there's so much going on. The opening is now way delayed than you thought it was going to be. It's, you've got all these other challenges that are happening, often between owners and operators as well.
And I'm guessing these employees that live in the area, they're not necessarily trained in luxury hotel, like hospitality. So that is an under assumption as well. People kind of forget that requires attention.
Well, that's the other part of it, is that they're going to be, often the graduates that we have from Saira would not have even been interviewed by that HR person. So because they don't have at that time the confidence or knowledge or skills to be able to then get an interview. So so essentially what HR is working with are people from other hotels, which obviously they're poaching, but that doesn't really create longevity or sustainability in their model, and will inevitably lead to turnover. And so you're either poaching, or you're bringing in from, main towns like an hour, 2 hours away, which is expensive, and eventually they'll go home. So they won't really even give the local community, who's never seen a luxury hotel or a lifestyle hotel, a shot, because they're not showing up, right? And I don't blame them, but I think it's talent that otherwise would have been overlooked, is what we find.
Yeah, totally. And so you go in with this kind of pretty complete methodology in partnering with these companies, these hotels. Depending on the scope of the project, you're able to really go out into the community. How do you begin finding these people to begin with? Do you literally wander the streets?
Yeah. No, we literally do. So there's a 4-step process in how we interview. But even going back to the example, let's say we need 75 students, we really want to interview about 150 in the last round, which is a 1-to-1 interview. But in the first round, where you're just getting them to apply online, and we have other kind of techniques to look at whether they fit the kind of Saira student and also the brand that we're working with. But initially, just to get those 150, 200, so we start with finding a local project coordinator on the ground, someone who knows everyone, basically, and someone who can tell us, okay, go to these schools, go to these nonprofits, post the flyers at these supermarkets and this bank. And so you start with kind of just flyers everywhere. And then depending on the market and how difficult it is to find the number of people we look for, we then have to go and pitch. So we go to schools, we go to nonprofits, we tell them about what we're doing and see if their students are interested in applying. And often at that point, it's quite challenging, because they may not be interested in hospitality for a number of different reasons.
And so in that early interview stage, you're kind of whittling that original group down to, in that particular instance, you said like 70. And then those individuals are interviewing directly with the hotel based on after all of their education with you?
So yeah, so they'll after our interviews, we accept them into the program, and then those 75 graduates, which may be around 70, 72 after the program, we'll then recommend to the hotel partner to hire, knowing them very well and saying to them they've shown up to 4 interviews, they've come to 2 weeks or 4, 6, 8 weeks of classes, and really giving them like an in-depth understanding of that person who would then and then we'll recommend them to the positions depending on what the hotel's looking to hire.
So like what would be something you might say about a particular candidate that you really like, that you think is a good fit for a particular position?
So it's interesting because you get to know them really well. Let's just say someone is great, potentially may not initially have the confidence to say they want to be in front office. So a lot of our students will initially say just maintenance or engineering or something back of house where they don't have interaction with the guest. But then after the program, after they've taken all the classes and they understand how to communicate with the guest, they'll then say, no, I want to be in front office, or or they might even be like a little too adventurous, and want to manage a department or something.
I'm gonna own this place.
yeah. I've definitely had some experience with that when I was teaching, because I think I set expectations way too high in the pilot. So, but essentially, you can then tell them that the student, initially said this, now they want to be in this department, and they have been on time and they have been punctual, but they may have issues with communication. Just so they are very passionate, and so, but maybe have difficulty with eye contact. And we've talked about eye contact in the course, but just so they are engaged, they are listening, they may look away. So this is the kind of detail we can give them after spending like months with them.
And it's nice, at least in my experience with Esperanza, it was really nice for the hotel to know that a specialist was focusing on this process, really digging in deep, really getting to know each of these individuals, being a connector in a lot of ways. Once these people do get hired, once there does appear to be a good fit, do you then move on to the next project? Like, walk us through some of the achievements that you've nailed, because when we first started, again, it was only an idea, and now I'm doing these Google searches and you're everywhere.
I hope I'm not everywhere. But
only the good place.
Yeah, no, we place them, we pass on this list to the hotels, and if the hotels need more help from us and say, can you assist in the interview process again? And, we're happy to do so. But typically we hand over this list of names and information, and then we'll track the students ongoing very closely for the next 6 months to make sure we know the numbers of students who are hired. And then ongoing, we want to know who's quit, who's promoted, who's been fired, what are the reasons. And it's a difficult thing to do, especially when you're not on the ground. So we rely on our local trainers quite a lot to kind of give us the information, because we don't want to hear it just from the hotel side. We want to hear it from both sides and understand what happened and why are these numbers, because essentially one of the things that we're really proud of is that our turnover rates are around 10%.
Wow.
And in the industry, they're around 70, 80%. So we have a lot of reasons as to why our turnover is low, but we also need to make sure that the student showed up for 8 weeks of classes and 4 interviews and on time. And now you're telling me that, they're not showing up to work. And you have to realize that at some point it's on the hotel brand to understand what the problem is. There's only so long we can stay involved, which is a difficult thing to figure out.
And what is the biggest sort of thing that you've seen that tends to lead to failure in that sense? Is it just failing to stay on top of the relationship, or like what is a best practice here?
It's always going to be management, unfortunately. It's always going to come down to management, and really starting at the top. And so something that we are trying to, we realize that, and so we teach leadership to our entry-level students, but we also encourage managers to come into our classes as much as possible, and especially attend that leadership module, because if everyone can be on the same page, that's going to really kind of change the environment for our graduates once they start working.
Yeah.
But quite often, they'll be new, and they may be faced with managers who already kind of have a slightly negative view of the industry or the hotel brand, or who might have experience that has jaded them in a way. So you have to really focus on management before you can look at the results of the entry-level team.
And share some of the success stories, because I remember the Namibia one that you were telling me about. But that's just one of them, right?
Yeah, I think, there's Namibia was our recent project. So we started, 2015 is when I did the pilot in downtown LA. And that was me teaching at a nonprofit called A Place Called Home in South Central. And that was working with maybe 5 or 7 students who I think just had a laugh and found it fun to come to these classes where I was trying to teach. And so, but they did get, like I said, they did get offered positions at the time with Starwood, now Marriott, but with the W hotels. And one of them got this great job as a minibar attendant, but wanted to become the head designer of uniforms. And I was like, shit, what did I do?
I forgot that module.
Yeah, she should have taken that job. But I learned a lot from that pilot. And then I did the first pop-up I did was with Liz Lambert of Bunkhouse Hotels, now part of Standard Hotel Group. And that was in Todos Santos in Mexico. And that was the Hotel San Cristobal that opened in 2016. And that has very low levels of turnover. It's a beautiful hotel also, which helps, and a great team. And then the next project was in Costa Palmas, which is just on the other side of Cabo, and that was with the Four Seasons Beach Club that was opening as the first part of this development that now I think has got the Four Seasons and the Aman opened or opening soon. And then we did 2 in the British Virgin Islands just after the hurricanes hit in 2018. And that time we worked with a handful of hotels, including Rosewood, Virgin Limited, Autograph Collection, and an independent hotel called Bitter End. And then we ran 2 simultaneous schools on 2 different islands, which we didn't expect to do, but we did.
And just to interrupt real quick, is there a reason that took place immediately after the hurricanes? Were people looking for a new kind of community rebuild?
Yeah, that was a big part of it. So I think first of all, when I heard about the hurricanes, that's when I reached out to any contacts I had that may know Virgin, who really kind of led the initiative in the British Virgin Islands. And so I think I wanted to help, and I knew hotels were struggling there, and I knew people would need something to look forward to after losing everything. So I thought at that period of time, if we went in a year earlier and there were no hurricanes, I don't know if we could be as successful changing the attitudes and mindsets of our students.
The conditions are so relevant, huh?
Right, totally. So I think they might have laughed at us before, or they might have not felt any need to keep their jobs or, need to even get jobs. But now they'd lost everything, and they realize they can either be hired in the government or be hired in tourism. And so they needed these jobs that were getting, more and more scarce as hotels were shut and reopening. So a lot of these hotels that I mentioned were reopening or in the next year or 2 years. And so there was like this silver lining and this moment where you could finally increase the levels of service and kind of ignite that hospitality gene in people, which had been suppressed because of the culture and because we realized that for a lot of them, service was servitude. And so we had to shift that mindset in the British Virgin Islands, which we could only do after the hurricanes.
There's a difference between doing stuff spontaneously and by your gut versus making a concrete plan. As a manager, you know the value of adding homeowners to your program, but do you know the most effective way to get owners to sign up for your program? Are you caught between running day-to-day operations and finding time to actually grow your business to reach that property count sweet spot? Vintori is the only sales and marketing platform in the industry entirely dedicated to helping you add new homes to your program. And they do this with advanced technology and proven marketing methods. They go way beyond the annual postcard. They build 12 months of real campaigns to capture quality leads and convert them into new homeowners within your program. You can put their experts to work for you by visiting vintori.com, or you can get a free masterclass video on owner acquisition that'll help you convert more owners today at vintori.com/unlocked. That's a special offer exclusively inside of your ear right now. I've seen this presentation that Brooke put together, and it is insanely effective. This is how Vintori thinks. They wow you with really actionable information first, and then you become real partners. And I think that's great. And along those same lines, there's a difference between piecing together some kind of smart home automation and hiring one company to do it all in one fell swoop. Let Point Central reduce hassle and improve your income through their smart property automation. You can eliminate keys with connected door locks, which allows your guests to go directly to their rental. Pro tip, nobody likes to stand in line and go to the office to get the keys. This removes late night trips due to lost keys and notifications that are delivered straight to your smartphone when maintenance teams or cleaning crews have completed their work. You can use Point Central to control utility bills and schedule set points so that renters don't drastically raise or lower the temperature when the property is occupied, much less when they are gone, which is really annoying. You can also prevent costly maintenance projects through real-time alerts such as water leak detectors, humidity limits, and the new HVAC analytics program, which tells us when an HVAC unit starts to misbehave. These are all the kinds of lessons people typically learn the expensive way. Finally, give your owners an extra peace of mind with monitored life safety services such as smoke, carbon monoxide, and intrusion monitoring. Again, all these things that you don't want inside of your home. Why not let Point Central just monitor it all for you? Visit pointcentral.com/VRMB for a demo with one of their team members. They're a great company to work with. I want to get into how today's pandemic is sort of beginning to create similar kinds of conditions, but do share the Namibia one because I think that one's remarkable.
That was a good one. That was last year. So that was the last one we did in November. And that was a beautiful one. So we partnered with Habitas, which started in Tulum and is very much a community-focused lifestyle, I would say, lifestyle luxury brand. And they are opening this year with some delays, obviously, but Namibians were. It was a beautiful project. It was difficult because of I didn't realize the levels of need that we were going to face when we got there. So we could only take. What did we take? I think we ended up taking more than we were going to in terms of the number of students, because we figured, why not? They may not get this opportunity to get this education before, but I remember one of the students in the interview process told me that everyone thought it was a scam down there. They thought there's no way that you would get this free education and this potential opportunity to get a job and, just for free. And, it was just something that a lot of people were a little negative about and skeptical about. Not negatives, but skeptical, and rightfully so.
Yeah, there were probably plenty of scams that took place before that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But it was just, to them, it was shocking that, anyone could apply. You didn't need experience. You didn't need any money. you just really needed to kind of smile and show up and be on time and kind of have that vibe. And that was, I mean, we obviously didn't tell them that's all you needed, but essentially that's it.
That's
That's
all
what
you
they
need.
needed. You know, we just tested them like many times before we accepted them. But they were, you know, we'd go around the class, and one of the kind of rituals we do is, you know, you talk about something from the day before, and it almost brings you into the present because you're moving that day apart, and you're saying that's what happened yesterday, and that was kind of one of the highs or one of the lows, whatever you want to share. And it's also getting them used to the idea of sharing and community and all that. So anyway, one of the students was going around the class, and he said that he had a really difficult day because he was walking home from school with his brother, and often an hour walk sometimes just to get to the school, and they have no problem with that, and they're on time. But anyway, that wasn't the problem. He was walking home with his brother, and then they were held at gunshot for no reason whatsoever. And they, you know, and it was really difficult for him to then move on and, you know, get on with whatever homework he might have had. We try not to give homework because I hate homework, but, you know, exercises optional that he was doing. And then, you know, just to come walk back and come to school that morning. And you just get perspective on how people's lives, you know, just like, and that he wasn't saying it in a way that was like, let's talk about me. He was just saying it like that was his low.
This is something that I had to be, that concerned me yesterday.
Right. Yeah. Like, you know, like I could be concerned that we were out of, I don't know, fucking oat milk. But like, you know, this is his concern. And it was mind blowing, but he was, you know, he got hired. He had great energy, great smile, like just on time, you know, phones away. These guys were fantastic students to work with, just really beautiful.
And I think the really poignant thing about that one is that that's also something that everybody listening to that is going to be like, wow, I certainly have never had that problem in my own work, in my own commute.
Right.
And nor would any of the people of that hotel that you partnered with there probably have ever had that. But it just goes to show how the process of getting proximate to these individuals and their real needs is so important, because if you don't hear that kind of thing, you may overlook it and assume the guy's just got a bad disposition, or he's not, he's negative or whatever.
Which is a huge part of that. You know, just to go on, like, we assume so many things, and, you know, they're lazy, and you know, no one's ever taught, and that's why we do what we do, because no one's ever said, you know, your body language is negative. You know, you're turning your back. That's negative. They've never heard this. They've never heard about eye contact. They've never heard about emotional intelligence. They've never heard so many things that we, or, you know, you and I, and, you know, whoever might be listening, is for granted. You know, don't interrupt. These are things that we were taught. And so one of the struggles I have is, how much do you teach? You know, like, when do you stop? You know, we keep adding modules in nutrition and sustainability, and, you know, because we think, oh, they need to know this, and then you look at the school and you're like, what are we teaching? Like, everything?
Yeah. And you mentioned, well, two things. One, you mentioned that we are taught not to interrupt, and I've interrupted you several times, so I want to get that on the table.
I do that
Second,
too.
You mentioned that you have this kind of, you're looking for this energy, this good hospitality energy. And I want to shift now into people that are listening to this that love the idea of incorporating local individuals who may not be the people who are officially interviewing for that job position. They want to incorporate those individuals into their business, but that maybe don't have a full hospitality pop-up school at their disposal. Let's start to talk about a little bit. First of all, what is that kind of energy, that can-do spirit that you're mentioning earlier? How do you seek that?
You know it. You just have to tap into it more. You know, all of us can tell when, the minute someone comes up and says hi, that you can feel their energy. Not to sound too, you know, whimsical, but you can. And so you need to just tap into that more. And sometimes it's difficult because people can be shy. especially
Mm-hmm.
in this demographic that we work with. So sometimes you have to really dig a little deeper and say, is it there or is it not there? And to me, it's really quite black and white. You either have it or you don't. You either see someone struggling and want to help, or you don't.
It could also be like a business an individual that works at another business that has it, right? You could
Yeah,
have a waiter
yeah,
that you always observe at the local
yeah.
restaurant who just is such an incredible service attendant that could be a perfect fit, right?
Right, but you try not to poach. So,
Oh, right.
so
Forgot about that.
yeah, so that's why we have to be careful. But if they're happy, and they're really happy serving, then But I think if you are, if you're trying to do this even on a small scale, you can. You don't need to do a whole school if you, depending on what the needs are. If you're just
Mm-hmm.
looking for a few people to help out, and you've
Mm-hmm.
got, a vacation rental kind of business, you can do this just by spending more time on interview processes,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching. Even, I've seen similar kind of models in a way where you're just teaching a couple of hours every week, and it's not a full curriculum like we have, and it's not trainers that are trained, but you can do this in a light way, which I think is super interesting, and I think more people should do, and I'd be happy to advise on how to do that.
So it's not exclusive to big businesses, big, and I say big, like some of the
Mm,
hotels that you mentioned are fairly big companies. But
mm,
when we really drill down to, let's say, a small property management company that manages, let's say, 70 properties, and they have a team of maybe 5 individuals, it's not totally unrealistic to go out into the community and find somebody who could be a wonderful fit.
mm,
What are some of the outcomes and or tangible benefits that you have observed after this kind of thing is done? Because I think a lot of people listening may say, oh, that sounds like a nice idea, but I'd actually like to connect with them the final outcome. What does it look
mm.
like to the business and to the individual who is participating after it's done?
One of the biggest values for the hotel brands that we partner with, I think there's a couple, but one is brand loyalty. So because you've given them this education and this opportunity, because these hotels have invested in them before even hiring them in a way, you've got this buy-in from the community. So when we first interview our students and we ask them, what do you know about Habitas or whichever brand partner we have? And they often don't know much, a hotel, school, they might get confused, and by the end of it, they're so bought into that brand because we are lucky to partner with brands with great values.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've bought into this kind of the guest already. They know what to expect. They are kind of indebted to this brand even before they've hired them. So this loyalty really kind of sticks, and that's one of the biggest takeaways. But also, many hotels will just often just open, and they won't really get any community buy-in before they do so. And so this idea of giving education before you take resources, I think, is quite a powerful way that hotels need to start to think about when they're entering communities. What can you
Mm-hmm.
give to these people? And often you don't really get much better than education, right? It's the whole teach the man to fish thing. That's one of the best gifts I think you can give someone. Um, so I think they get buy-in, they get loyalty, they get this kind of also this fresh source of talent that they otherwise may never have found. We
Mm-hmm.
find, with the diamonds in the rough, the students that have the potential but just needed a little bit more confidence, and they would have
Mm-hmm.
got the job. So you wouldn't have found these students otherwise. So you have this huge pool of talent to hire from. And then you obviously have retention, because these students are also going together. They're going from school to the hotel. So they've already built this network of support amongst themselves. So they're much less likely, there's a lot more accountability, a lot more ownership. If you suddenly decide you're going to leave, you now have a whole community to almost answer to. As opposed to if you knew no one, you took the job, you left, and no one really is going to notice.
And how much effort should go into a training program for a company like the one I just mentioned,
Mm.
who in this new post-pandemic world, who is has some of the conditions that you mentioned of a post-hurricane
Mm.
U.S. Virgin Islands. There is chaos, there is uncertainty,
Right.
there are large government institutions that have pretty much neglected local neighborhoods, and the problems are not getting solved.
Mm.
How much actual training do you think needs to go into doing this properly? Like, can you do, you mentioned you could do a couple hours a week, but
Mm.
does this need to be a deliberate
Yeah.
thing that you are going to weave into your business? It can't just be added on to the top.
You can. That's a good question. We didn't think we could do anything in 2 weeks. That's not fair to say, but we didn't think we could have as much impact as we had in 2 weeks, which was 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, so 40 hours.
Wow.
And that's what we did in Namibia, and that was a strong impact. But a lot of the work goes into before that, before the school starts, when we're interviewing. That can take a couple of months. So I think a lot of it, even if you're not going to do a 40-hour, training, even if you're going to just do 20 hours, I think you can make an impact, but a lot of the impact has to be before. So you need to get people to realize this is an opportunity. It's not easy to get in. We're going to interview you 4 times. You're going to have to show up before you even have to show up to school.
Mm-hmm.
And that increases this kind of excitement, so that on the day they're accepted, they're so bought in already just to the school itself, without even talking about a job.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to build this excitement, this momentum. You have to almost do PR for what you're going to offer. And then your offering, I think, can be as quick as 2 weeks. It might be quicker if you want. It really depends on the skills you need them to have at the end of it. But I think 2 weeks is a good amount of time. I think 3 hours a day is a lot for some people to really kind of focus.
Mm-hmm.
So you could split it up also and do hands-on training for half the day and theoretical kind of learning for the other half. Depending on everyone's schedules and availability, often these students can only really take 3 hours a day off from families or whatever they're doing.
Yeah, because a lot of them may have other jobs, they may have other obligations.
Well, we don't hire, sorry, Matt, but we don't hire anyone. We don't take on students that have any kind of full-time employment, because we are really trying to get to students who need the opportunity.
Interesting. You talk about PR and building up the PR around the job itself. What is the best balance that you found in actually sharing this newfound recruitment methodology with the general public? Is that something that they can then share with travelers?
What do you mean? You lost me a little bit.
So the conventional small vacation rental business is doing a normal recruitment and hiring strategy. They're now thinking about this new and improved style of recruitment and hiring. And they're thinking to themselves that this might actually begin to attract people because we're doing something differently than the other hotels down the street. With the case of Esperanza, we never promoted it publicly, specifically with the individuals from our program that I hired at Cuatro Tulipanes, but we would certainly introduce each of our graduates and our employees to guests, and guests just got such an amazing experience out of meeting a former gang member who is now making a fair wage and not trying to rob them.
Right.
What's the best way to actually share that information with people who are coming in contact with, or is it not something that needs to be shared?
Oh, no, you should definitely share it. I think this is what is giving guests a sense of purpose when they travel now. So I think it's a huge part of the guest experience. I think that one way is, like you said, when the guest is there and they're interacting, and you also have to teach that to your team. So you have to tell them, they might not very often these students are not going to think their story is important. They're not going to realize that the guest wants to hear their story. Sometimes the guest doesn't want to hear a story. So you have to also teach the line of when to share and when is it too much information and what is too much information. But once you've done that, I think the team needs to know that they are typically, depending on the hotel and the market and the guest demographic, they're typically quite curious to learn about who you are and what the location is like and what it was like growing up there.
Mm-hmm.
And travel is a form of education, right? So I think that the more interaction you can encourage between these entry level employees and the guest, often the better it will be, as long as they're reading the right signs and the body language of the guest and all of that. But I think that's one way. But hotels or vacation rental businesses, they need to promote this. This is key to their CSR. This is key to making a difference as to whether a guest may even stay with you or someone similar. Because it's much like Tom's. It's much like it's much along the same model of what am I get a holiday, but also I'm giving back. It eases your conscience a bit. It it makes you feel like you're doing more than just taking a holiday.
And I think this is like a new, maybe not new. It's been a gradual shift in tourism. People wanting that kind of connectivity as they travel, and it's really been accelerated, I think, because of the pandemic. When people do take that first vacation, they're going to experience newfound levels of appreciation for those local individuals and the stories that come from that destination.
Right.
Last time you and I chatted, I asked you, where is Saira Hospitality going next because of this wonderful pandemic? And you said,
I said, who knows?
who the hell knows? I think there may have been an expletive in there.
I know. I literally thought, I was like, who fucking knows? I don't know what we're editing and what we're not. But
this has challenged your business model, right? A little bit.
Of course, yeah. It's challenged it. I slowly realized it was like beginning of March, end of February. I think I met with the head of Ace Hotels, and we had decided we're going to do a New York all-women cook school, and women are going to be back in the kitchen, and we're going to fill this need that New York hotels and restaurants had for well-trained local cooks. And I wanted to, make it an all-women school and kind of play on that a little bit. And also, thinking, we can get women from sex trafficking backgrounds into the kitchens, and super cool. And it was going to be out of the Ace and Nomad. And then it was only a week later when I spoke to a friend who was my publicist at one point, and I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "Yeah, except they don't need any cooks anymore. You're gonna have super well-trained chefs who are dying to get a job, even as like line cooks potentially. Like the restaurants are all going to be shut down." And I was like, "Fuck." You're right.
Yeah.
You're totally right. Like there's the demand for well-trained local talent is now, it's going to be there, but they're going to have so much competition. So it has made me really think about, now what? I was meeting a need. Any good business, like they'll teach you at school, was like, what's the need? What's the need? That was the constant question in entrepreneurship classes, was like, what need are you filling? And very rarely, sometimes, I'm understanding that there doesn't have to be a need, but a way, you can pivot. But I have to sit back now and think, well, what's the need? Where's the need?
Mm-hmm. And what's the like in my instance, I too had that like that reset moment. I was like, okay, this vacation rental industry may look very different in a post-pandemic world. And actually, over the time since we last chatted, I've started to think that it actually won't be terribly different, that a lot of the things we were already doing are going to need to be done way better. But with those things done better, our industry actually has a new place for a number of different reasons. But it does also require completely rethinking what was working, what wasn't working, what you were enjoying, what you weren't enjoying, what kinds of people can afford to pay you because it's a business, and what people can't afford anymore. So are you just kind of like going through this whole process, edit process now?
Partly I would say, look, I was obsessed with hotels being the only ones funding this, and I was like, we don't need donations, we don't need grants, but we do. We need everything, right? You need to blend this model so that there's now 3 different sources of revenue instead of just the hotels paying for it. Saying that, I'm still surprised to see hotels reaching out in interesting locations. Saudi Arabia coming up twice in the last
recently
in the last couple of weeks since we last spoke.
Oh wow! So this is post pandemic. You've had new hotels reaching out.
Totally. I've got
Nice.
potentially a new permanent school in Cabo. A hotel developer wants to develop that. That's right now a youth center, but we'll probably try and develop into more of a hospitality school offering for locals. But that would be a permanent thing, so it would run all year round, which is really, really the goal. And something I was trying to look more into before the pandemic is how do we make this scalable? How do we have longevity? After the BVI, all the students wanted to take the Saira program, and there was only one. So you have to start looking at that and questioning, this pandemic is making you question everything that didn't quite work, I got tons of proposals, tons of interest. And then they heard that the school can cost anywhere from 50 to 150 grand. And, all of a sudden it was less than 10 pop-ups, that I'd done. So I think it's just like you said, it's making you think about what you do. How do you do it better? We're trying to look at what we can teach online now. I've been through, like I said at the beginning, I've been working just as much as I have before, but now I've been focusing on our content. And I've been working with 8 different curriculum directors kind of all over the world who specialize in different modules. And how do we make this more efficient? How do we make sure the trainer really absorbs this easily? How do we refresh our content? What am I watching on Masterclass? On what's Chris Voss saying about emotional intelligence that we can now put into our modules? So it's an interesting time to just kind of look at everything that wasn't working and fix it.
And is your instinct here that the core, like the fundamentals of your organization, kind of this crossroad where hospitality and philanthropy are interlinked? Is your instinct that this pandemic and the way that it's challenging people to actually look at their own communities, is there still is that going anywhere anytime soon, or is this, if anything, going to be accentuated, do you think?
I was confused. Initially I thought, ooh, we're screwed. Like these hotels have no money, they can barely open. How are they going to pay at all? And then I heard from a friend in the industry who kind of leads, in my opinion, sustainable tourism. Do you know Hans from Cayuga in Costa Rica?
No, but I do know Cayuga. Yeah, Cayuga Collection.
I think they've been way ahead of the curve for years and years in terms of how do you do things sustainably in hospitality. And he reached out and said, wow, you're going to be busier than ever after this pandemic. And I was like, do you think? Like, what?
You were actually surprised by it. You thought he was joking.
I was like, we need to jump on a call, which we still need to do, and figure out what you're.
Can you please explain to me why? How
are we going to be so busy?
But it has become clear to you since.
No. I don't think it's clear at all. I think it's still gray. I think areas like Saudi Arabia, and they have some money to put in, that's fine. I think projects that had money behind it. There's one coming up in California. That still will go ahead. One in West Virginia, that will still go ahead. The school in Mexico, I think when there's money, it's okay, but that won't help me to scale as fast as we need to. And we only need to scale, not just because scaling is what people say you need to do. We need to scale because there's too many people all over the world that just don't know these basic things that I think are basic that will get them these jobs. And too many people sit around and they resent hotels and they don't see opportunity. And that's why we need to scale. We need to increase our impact. We've been told it's life-changing many, many, many times by these students. So how can you not do more of it? So that's the question is how do we keep doing more of this? But how are our students going to compete, with top chefs? My thinking is maybe they have, I think we're finding those students with the hospitality genes. You might be a top chef, but you might not have that passion and that desire to serve. And so that may set our students apart. But I don't know. We got to see what happens.
Well, I would like to officially make this part 1 of a 2-part series. I would love to do the follow-up conversation with you in a couple months from now, once you have really latched on to whatever this slightly new pivot might entail. Because I really do believe that the trend here that was happening gradually and is now accelerated is that we as individuals, as families, as neighbors, as small businesses, we are the only ones who will be able to solve our own community's problems. And hoping that somebody else is going to come in and do it for us has really just been proven to be false way of thinking in all of this.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it really does boil down to coming up with new creative solutions that haven't necessarily been conventional in any given industry, but are also not rocket science, that are things that you kind of could put together. And if I know vacation rental professionals at all, they are incredible problem solvers, and they're really innovative thinkers of just doing stuff.
Right.
And I really think that this is a nice fit. So I would like to make this part 1. Can people reach out to you if they'd like to learn a little bit more in between part 1 and part 2?
And I'd like to think about also how I can help the vacation rental specialists also in like a small scale, Saira. Like how does it look on a small scale, and what could they do? Because I think that's really interesting. I haven't thought about that before. But yeah, reach out.
Yeah, these people are professional. They are driven. They're creative. They're creating meaningful impact in their local communities. They don't always get recognized by local governments or even like bigger travel sectors. But our colleagues, I think, are perfectly positioned to really embrace this new style of thinking.
Yeah.
And you might be a wonderful way of unlocking that. How do they get in touch with you?
So Instagram, obviously. Saira Hospitality is our handle, I think they call it. And,
you on TikTok?
No, that's that dance thing. No.
Really consider
no. I haven't done that yet. And then we have a website, sairahospitality.com, and you can reach out there. That's probably the best ways.
And I'm going to add one last thing. They can also watch your wonderful presentation from the Skift Summit.
Thank you.
It's wonderful. And only when I saw that video of you up there on stage talking through all the incredible things about Saira did I realize, holy cow, that's Harsha. She told me about this idea many years ago, and I was extremely proud of you. So thank you for coming on and sharing this wonderful story with our folks.
Thank you. Thank you for reaching back out.
Yes.
I'm excited to see you once this is all over.
Yes.
Ish.
Part 1 to be continued. Thank you, Harsha. I hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as I did having it. The episode was produced by Tammy Rowe and Stuart Hooper of Mango Fish Studios. Our intro song is The Moon of Pajang by Instant Party. And if you feel inspired, please consider sharing to social media with your big takeaway. We love takeaways. They make us feel great. Lastly, if you want to receive updates, you can do so at vrmb.com/mmm. And if you want to join our virtual community of vacation rental professionals, become a member of VRMB's Inner Circle today. Until next time.